That the people of ASEAN will feel for each other more, that we can understand each other better. And I said one day, we must have like a Eurovision, when ASEAN people will sing together and we don't have an ASEAN vision. And you see what Eurovision has done to the people of Europe. If a male colleague can marry any nationality, why can't I? Why do you ask me to resign? When we start thinking in terms of, we're ASEAN. We belong to one region. We're brothers and sisters. I think that would be the day when we can really say that we have succeeded.
Spokesman คุยรอบโลกกับโฆษก กต.
ยินดีต้อนรับสู่รายการ Spokesman Live นะครับวันนี้เราได้รับเกียรติจากอดีตรัฐมนตรีว่าการกระทรวงต่างประเทศของฟิลิปปินส์นะครับท่านเป็นนักการทูตมืออาชีพนะครับเป็นนักการทูตสตรีคนแรกในประวัติศาสตร์ของเอเชียนะครับที่ได้รับแต่งตั้งเป็นรัฐมนตรีว่าการกระทรวงการต่างประเทศของฟิลิปปินส์ท่านมีความสามารถด้านภาษาที่หลากหลายนะครับเป็นผู้เชี่ยวชาญด้านการต่างประเทศในหลายแง่มุมโดยเฉพาะเรื่องอาเซียนนะครับระหว่างนี้ท่านอยู่ในระหว่างการเดินทางมาเยือนประเทศไทยนะครับเพื่อเข้าร่วมการประชุม Global Summit of Womenนะครับที่ไทยเป็นเจ้าภาพนะครับรายการของเราถือโอกาสนะครับเป็นเกียรติอย่างยิ่งที่ได้มีโอกาสได้เชิญท่านมาพูดคุยเกี่ยวกับอาเซียนนะครับซึ่งเป็นเสาหลักหนึ่งนะครับของการต่างประเทศไทยและของอาเซียนด้วยนะครับอาเซียนตอนนี้ก็เป็นองค์การระหว่างประเทศนะครับระดับภูมิภาคที่กำลังเผชิญหน้ากับความท้าทายใหม่ๆนะครับแล้วก็มีโอกาสที่เราจะส่งเสริมงานของอาเซียนความร่วมมือในภูมิภาคของเราได้อีกมากนอกจากนั้นเนี่ยท่านยังเป็นผู้เรียนรู้งานแล้วก็มีประสบการณ์มากมายนะครับในงานด้านการส่งเสริมสิทธิสตรีนะครับซึ่งจะเป็นประโยชน์อย่างยิ่งต่อผู้ชมทุกเพศทุกวัยนะครับร่วมกันแก้โจทย์เรื่องความเท่าเทียมทางเพศในชีวิตประจำวันและสังคมของเราท่านทูต Delia Albert นะครับผมเริ่มต้นในภาษาไทยนะครับแต่เดี๋ยวเวลาคุยกับท่านขออนุญาตคุยเป็นภาษาอังกฤษนะครับ Good morning Ambassador Delia Albert.
Do I say สวัสดีครับ
สวัสดีครับ Yes, you can.
I learned this during the Global Summit of Women.
Yes, we are delighted to have you as our guest as you are the first Korean woman diplomat.to become Secretary or Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Philippines.
And Asia.
And Asia, in Asia as well. You represented the Philippines in many countries, including Switzerland, Germany, Australia, and you also chaired the United Nations Security Council in 2004. You introduced the agenda, the role of civil society in post-conflict peace building, highlighting the role of women.as peacemakers. But to begin with, Madam Ambassador, may I call you Ambassador, Madam?
Oh, you can call me Delia.
I would rather prefer...
I call you Tani, yeah.
Yes, just call me Tani. Would you mind to share with us first your ASEAN story, how it influenced your career, Madam Ambassador?
Well, thank you for this opportunity. You referred to my ASEAN story. Actually, I am finishing my book.And the title is My ASEAN Story because I feel that there has to be a personal account, a personal engagement of a person, not the press releases that we see every day, but how a person's life or people's lives are affected by ASEAN. Especially because I joined the Foreign Ministry in 1967, February 1967.And I was lucky to be in the right place, the right time, and someone said with the right credentials, so I joined the office of the foreign minister. And at that time, I think one should think of the context of the times when one talks about ASEAN today, because people forget what it was like in the 60s. We were all looking for a kind of stability in the region.There were two efforts, the ASA, Association of Asia, Southeast Asia, and then Mafilindo came. But each time there were three countries involved. And it was, I believe, Tanat Koman's idea, and of course the others agreed, that the region should not be just a conversation among three countries, but a wider circle, including not just the ASA, Mafilindo, but as well as Singapore. So from 3 and 4 with Thailand and Singapore. And I reading the speeches of Foreign Minister Koman, I think it was brilliant to have initiated this meeting of the minds of these 5 leaders of ASEAN. So I was teasing your foreign minister, Don. I said, actually, if you look back at history, Tanat Koman can be the founder of ASEAN. And Don always very modest. He said, "Oh, that's very nice." But if you read his, I think he's brilliant, and many people agree. When we celebrated 50 years of ASEAN in the Philippines, we were chairing. I was given a book by the nephew of Mr. Tanat Koman, and there I discovered the heart and soul of the man was really to find peace and prosperity for the future of this region, which is very well expressed in the brief but very significant Bangkok Declaration. It was brief enough so everyone can put in their way of interpreting it, and I think that we should commend Thailand for having that initiative. Of course, golf is very important in ASEAN,
Even back then?
Up to now. I had to learn golf because all the boys are playing golf and you're out of the conversation if you don't play golf. So I have to play golf. I remember my minister coming home and he said, we had a wonderful game in Bang Saen. Yeah, they were relaxed, they could talk to each other. And I remember him saying, "Our brothers in ASEAN." So if I look back, I said, next time I hope there will be our sisters in ASEAN, when women should come in more actively. But the feeling that there was a need for them to put their efforts together for the sake of the region. And that was a very tenuous situation at the time in the 60s. So one has to look at the context within which ASEAN was born. And I think there you can see the wisdom and vision of these 5 men who got together. And I remember when I was in Bonn, and that's where I met Foreign Minister Don, and they asked me to make a speech on ASEAN, and that was in the early 80s. And it's so difficult to say in German ASEAN and ASEAN, and so to make them understand who we are as a group, I said, just remember, we are an association of energetic and ambitious nations. That's what ASEAN means. I hope it's still true. But I remember those days when it was necessary for us to try to convince the world that we were a group working together.
But do you think ASEAN still serves its purpose after 55 years? What is the most important feature of ASEAN that contributes to the survival of the organization?
I think the fact that peace has prevailed. I mean, if you look at the world today, there are so many trouble areas, and we are happily working together, solving SARS together, solving common issues together. I think this has contributed not just for the sake of a peaceful relationship among governments, but the effect has cascaded a bit to the people. But I have to say that it has to do more. It has to do more to engage the people ourselves. And in my book, My ASEAN Story, I did an oral history of ASEAN in Singapore during the COVID time. I had time in my hands, so I wrote my memoirs on more than 50 years of ASEAN. And I said that unless we engage more people in ASEAN, we have already set the foundations. We have this fantastic roadmap for connectivity. We have all these fantastic documents, the Bali Concord, etc. We have to make that understood and felt by the people in the street. And to me, this is the big challenge of ASEAN today. Certainly, ASEAN is an intergovernmental organization, but it should serve the people themselves. So I think the peace element is there. So what do we do with this? How do we lift the status of the people on the ground, on of course the ministers and everybody, they meet a lot. And I always look at ASEAN like weaving a tapestry. You know, the more people have contacts with each other, not just on the top, but also on the ground. And I think that's very important. But the groundwork has been set. I think we have done a great job in being able to provide that platform within which people can interact. But unless people feel themselves that this peace has come and that they are stakeholders in this secure environment, I think that would be the big challenge of ASEAN.
You mentioned about the importance of raising the awareness about ASEAN, especially supporting the relations between the peoples. How would you define the term ASEAN way and the ASEAN centrality for the general public? Have the people of ASEAN benefited from these two concepts in your opinion?
You know, it's important to translate that into action and language which people will understand. I remember when I was ambassador to Australia, and somebody asked us, Australia is a very important dialogue partner, why can't we be a member of ASEAN? So I said, how will I answer this diplomatically? I said, you know, if you look at the symbol of ASEAN, the logo of ASEAN, it's rice stalks. So I said, because we eat rice 3 times a day, and that means a lot in terms of culture, in terms of tradition, in terms of mindfulness. I think, to me, being mindful that we are part of a bigger community than ourselves make us think of each other and be considerate. And there are many ways you can explain the ASEAN way. But if you look around, this is the way we behave in the Philippines, that's the way you behave in Thailand, the way that people in Indonesia behave, Malaysia, Brunei, and of course our new members in Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. I think it's that feeling that we are mindful of each other and considerate, and therefore our actions are influenced by this mindfulness. And somebody said, oh, doesn't that slow down ASEAN, you know? I said, if you're looking for impact, result, you have to take everybody into consideration. And yesterday, during this meeting with Laksana, she said to me, I'm so glad that you mentioned Tanat Koman in the conversation, because she said one of the best advice she had when she met with former Prime Minister Koman was that you should take things step by step so that you gain confidence and then you gain the trust of each other. Of course, we have what you call a maritime ASEAN and the continental ASEAN. But if you look back into our cultural heritage, and this is why it's important that the cultural aspect of the exchanges should be more prominent. The foundations are laid. And this is, they had a meeting here for the next 50 years of ASEAN, I think, last week.
Yes.
And they asked me, what do you think? I said, well, I would like to strengthen the people-to-people contact. And I said, perhaps you have not engaged the women enough. I think there should be, if you look at all the pictures of ASEAN, it's all these men together, you know. And I said, yeah, it's about time we have more women up on stage and up in leadership position. And this is why I was very happy to come to Bangkok again. And I met the most terrific women CEOs of Thailand. We opened the stock exchange, all the women from the Securities and Exchange Commission, the CEO of ICON Thailand, etc. I think this is also one way that ASEAN women CEOs could meet, and that could be an initiative of Thailand as an aftermath of this summit. Vietnam initiated ASEAN ASEAN Women Entrepreneurs Network.
AWEN, yes.
AWEN, and it's doing very well. But let's move on, and let's have the women CEOs. Perhaps then we can have more and more of that level, and again weaving through that ASEAN tapestry. And it's my dream to see all these women recognized for their contribution to their national interest, each one working for the country, but yet should be aware that there is a bigger region, wider region, which needs to be strengthened in terms of this people-to-people contact. And I part of my initiative when I retired was to organize ASEAN Society Philippines. I'm part of Asia Society in New York, but I said, why, you should have an ASEAN Society. And then I wrote to Don. I said, what do you think? And he said, it's a very good idea. We have an ASEAN association or organization here in Thailand. I said, you're chair now, when he was chair of ASEAN, why don't you call them together? And he did. So, I mean, when an idea becomes a real thing, I'm so happy and delighted. And I just hope that this carries on. He called the meeting here in 2019, I think, and then the lockdown happened. So everything sort of went quiet for some time. But after this global summit in Thailand, and I have to tell you, I received text messages, emails. They said it was one of the best organized summit in 32 years. Would you believe that? In 32, this is our 32nd year.
I see.
And I chair the ministerial roundtable, and Thailand had the Deputy Minister of Education, Kalaya Soponpanits,
Yes, yes.
a nuclear physicist, and I said, this is terrific. But she talked about practical projects of the King Water Project.
Yes, yes.
And those are the things that come, but if it comes from a woman of authority like her, it means a lot. So everybody was listening how this water initiative of the king has affected the economy of the economic lives of the people. That's what I mean by transmitting, downstreaming all these contacts between and among women leaders as well.
What about the Philippines' perspective on ASEAN? How has ASEAN helped to advance the national interests of the Philippines foreign policy?
As a founding member of ASEAN, when Foreign Minister Ramos came back and had a press conference, and he said, he was asked by the press, what about ASEAN? What's another organization? He says, no, ASEAN will survive because it is ours, because now we can rely on each other and we can seek each other's cooperation whenever we need, especially for us as a maritime country. You know, we have to be in touch with the neighbors around. And something that I myself experienced when we had problems like martial law in the Philippines, and of course the world was not quite happy with that, because we were part of a bigger community like ASEAN. We were not an outlier. We were part of a bigger community than ourselves. And this to me was very important in terms of our foreign policy, because we were not excluded. We were part of the world conversation on whatever political issues, economic issues, because there was an organization to which we belonged and which supported us. To me, that was very important. And again, now with our, I have to say it, the West Philippine Sea, that we were very happy with the support of our friends about taking our issues to we believe in the rule of law, and I'm sure Thailand also looks at the rule of law, and we were very happy with the cooperation of most of our neighbors. We did not feel alone. We did not feel isolated, you know, and this is very important in terms of our global relationship and for our own foreign policy. And for me, I'm an advocate of strengthening ASEAN, and we are coming to a very crucial stage when the global environment is so challenging. And because of that, this is a moment for me, I think, that ASEAN should strengthen its aims, its missions, its objectives, and which can only be felt and be assured of a future if the people themselves are engaged in it. And to me, I go on talking about ASEAN in many ways, from universities to high schools to women's groups. I find the women's groups very effective, and so I continue to do that. But as I said earlier, you know, looking at your women CEOs, they can be the champions for getting ASEAN women CEOs together.
But to demonstrate the usefulness of ASEAN, the value of ASEAN cooperation, in your view, what do you think are the major accomplishments of ASEAN in the past 55 years?
As a region, I think we have accomplished quite a bit in the 50 years. The fact that we are living in a peaceful community, which allows everybody to express themselves and develop themselves, which is not being challenged by any untoward events. You're comfortable to move on, you're comfortable to develop, and just look how prosperous ASEAN has become. But it should be so effective that the people in the country feel it and be aware of it. And that's the only way we can assure that this peace and security, and of course one talks about human security, not just the defense security, but the human security, the kind of cooperation that we feel we can have from each other. I think those are for me, among the many achievements that ASEAN, but the challenges are great. And unless, to me, we kind of reinvent ourselves and be more better united in terms of, I think unity is very important in terms of linking together and being able to appreciate each other and move together. I know it's difficult when we have some limited national interests, but because the platform is there for ASEAN to draw us together, should be a welcome development, and this should be translated to the people. I'm very conscious of that.
You're very positive about ASEAN. Before we move on to another very important topic about women and diplomacy, but your last take on ASEAN, what is your personal vision for ASEAN?
My personal vision? That the people of ASEAN will feel for each other more, that we can understand each other better. And I said one day, we must have like a Eurovision, you know, when ASEAN people will sing together, and we don't have an ASEAN vision. And you see what Eurovision has done to the people of Europe. It has put them together, and every time I I travel quite a bit in the region. I should not feel strange in Bangkok. I should not feel strange in Kuala Lumpur. I should not feel strange in Jakarta. You know, one should feel comfortable being able to appreciate who they are, because there's so many more that brings us together, but we have to be made aware of it. Mm-hmm. If you're not aware of it, you cannot appreciate it. Mm-hmm. I'm lucky because I have this possibility. But how many of us are able to do that? And so the challenge is for us to bring that awareness to as many people, as many layers of society as possible. And I think when we start thinking in terms of, we are ASEAN. No? We belong to one region. We are brothers and sisters. I think that would be the day when we can really say that we have succeeded. I think we still have quite a bit to go, but if everybody understands a certain responsibility to do it, mm-hmm. why not? Mm-hmm. I'm positive. Mm-hmm. I'm even passionate.
Another issue that is close to your heart is women empowerment, other than ASEAN. Throughout your career, you have broken many glass ceilings. You are Asia's first female career diplomat to become Foreign Minister, Secretary of Foreign Affairs of the Philippines. You have also used your various positions to advocate for gender fair global society. And you're now visiting Bangkok, and you've just finished the Global Summit for Women. It would be a great opportunity for us to learn more about the summit. What is the main objective of the Global Summit of Women? What is your role in the organization? And what has the summit accomplished so far? Well,
you know, the Global Summit was born 32 years ago. I have been attending 18 of the 32. Personally, I would, because I got to know the Global Summit later when I was ambassador to Australia. And I appreciated my first exposure. I think I went to Morocco, and I looked at Morocco and I said, this is a society that has women entrepreneurs. And so I brought 15 women from the Philippines, from the Muslim South. Mm-hmm. I wanted them to see that there are countries where it's a Muslim society, but the women are active participants in the economy. And it went so well. So that 15 women I brought to Morocco came home, and they started to have their own groups of women, and perhaps this is like building up to, could be peace, prosperity, whatever you want to call it, but it was an eye-opener for them. And to me, the key for the Global Summit success is that it's able to have a gender lens to any topic. I was very, very impressed with the discussion on women in space technology.
I see.
Here. And it made women understand and believe what they can do, that space technology is not going up to space. It's all the innovation that takes place and how women can study these technologies that can apply to their businesses. You see, it always relates to your economic. That's why it's called someone call it the Davos for women, because you meet wonderful women who are leading their businesses, and like what the participation was in Thailand, it was outstanding. And so the main focus really is to bring women into to use a gender lens to whatever issue there is, whether it's wellness, whether it's space technology, whether it's education, to make women feel more comfortable that there are other women from around the world who can help them with this. And I think it has done for 32 years if we have come to this situation where we can look at space technology from a gender lens. That's progress.
What are some of the women's causes that you have advocated? Which one?
In the Philippines?
Well, in the Philippines or internationally, which one are you most proud of?
2 years, no, 2030, when we wanted to hold the 30th anniversary in Bangkok. Every year we award a leadership award for a woman who has done a lot for her country, for her community, and with an impact. And we awarded Princess Sirindorn for her quiet way of doing things. You know, she supports 2 schools in the Philippines. She's amazing, you know, in a quiet way and in an effective way. And we felt that this was like a role model for someone of her stature to do things like this. And other women awardees was Madame Ogata of Japan, whom I admire for her work in refugees and migration, etc. And this year, this is the second time ever that we have another Thai to be awarded the global, where we fund some. It's not just the recognition, but we help the project. Dr. Oh, I forgot her name. She worked on the cure for HIV/AIDS. She's a terrific woman. She's Thai. And when I told Laksana about it, she said, I'm so glad she got a global recognition because her work in medical, using local medicine to help people in Africa cope with HIV/AIDS was great. So this is part of the many of the features of the Global Summit of Women. Now, every year I chair the roundtable for women ministers who come to attend. And in Lisbon last year, I was very fortunate to and she came to Thailand because we invited her, a 39-year-old president of Kosovo, woman.
Right.
And she came from your university, Pittsburgh.
Oh, yes.
She had her PhD
University
in
of Pittsburgh.
international law, and she was in my round table, and she was a refugee from the Balkan Wars. You see, we try to look for outstanding women who grow out of their challenges and succeed to get over these challenges. All her life she was a refugee, but she was able to pursue her dream to help her people. At 39, she was president, of course, and we invited her here, so she came. She came for one day, and she had to go back because of the Ukraine issue or whatever. And anyway, I said, this is what the Global Summit of Women does. We work in quiet ways, but I think the impact on women themselves is gaining that confidence and also trust among each other. And I think we're looking forward to the next Global Summit in Dubai. What we do, and I'm part of the I'm part of the International Planning Advisory Committee. So we meet anywhere in the world and discuss what are the topics, who should we invite, where do we have it. But now we decided we are going to Dubai because 1 year we are in Asia, 1 year we are in Europe, 1 year we are in Africa, this time we are in the Middle East. So that we are as inclusive as possible for women from around the world to participate and make them feel that the issues that bother women in Africa is not so different from the problems here. And there's this fantastic Thai lady, doctor, who came out with this treatment for HIV/AIDS.
Would it be Dr. Krishna Graisin?
Yeah, I have her name somewhere, but your names are so difficult. But she's fantastic, and she saw me and she said, "Oh, from the Philippines, I have projects in the Philippines." I said, "Yeah, you are Magsaysay awardee." Yeah, just like others. Princess Sirindorn is also a Magsaysay awardee. I'm in the board of the Magsaysay. You see how busy I'm in
You're
this and
very
that
busy
board.
in various.
Because I want to bring in the ASEAN element into people's thinking, you know.
Coming close to the end of our show, but very important question: what advice would you give to career women? And we have many career women in our foreign service here who wish to become successful in both work and in personal life as well.
Actually, I will recommend for all the women diplomats to read a fantastic book called The Female Brain. I use it all my speeches because it's a 20-year study by a medical doctor from Harvard University. She studied the female brain. It's not that we're better or worse, we are different. It's there in the brain. And she said that she found in her experiments that women have a very strong capacity to empathize, to empathize, to feel with. And I said, yeah, a diplomat should have that capacity to empathize. And he said something like that women have an easier way to read body language. You don't have to say anything, but because the brain is geared towards being able to interpret body language. There's so many other things. But the most important thing that I learned from this book is the fact that women have a great capacity to resolve conflicts without coming into a head-on. They're able to arrive at a conclusion that a conflict is avoided. And when I read that book, I recommended it to all our women diplomats. And so I said, try to understand who you are, not just intellectually, but physically, like your brain, how it works. And I was very happy to recommend it to some women, and they came back and they said, yeah, you're right. I said, everybody knows this, but nobody has put it in a scientific way, how we are able to, special qualities of the brain that works very well in the practice of diplomacy. When I chaired the Security Council, I had coffee with Kofi Annan, with Kofi Annan. And he told me, you know, you remind me of the remarkable women ambassadors from your country in Beijing, in London, in New York, in Geneva. I said, yeah, we assign them where the need is. And he said, but you must have quite a number of them. I said, I don't really know. So when I went home, I said, give me a list of our women ambassadors. And I was surprised myself. From 1958 to because I wrote the book in 2018, there were 90 women ambassadors. 78 were career and a few political ambassadors. And this last year, I checked a new ambassador to Laos, etc. Women, 5. So I said, wow, 95 women from 1958 to 2021. That's a world record. So now I'm validating, and I'm going to present to you the volume 1 of my book. It's called Women in Diplomacy, the Remarkable Ambassadors in the Philippine Foreign Service. And you talk about balancing personal life. I had a unique experience because in 1972-73, the Philippines drafted, we made the first draft, our office, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, which everybody in ASEAN has ratified. That was our initiative. At that time, I was ready to get married, but I could not marry a foreign man and stay in the service. I would have to resign. The problem was the men could marry any woman of any nationality and they can continue with the profession. I said that's not fair. So I challenged that and I won. After 3.5 years of convincing our foreign ministry that what applies to men should equally apply to women. And I said, what's the difference? If a male colleague can marry any nationality, why can't I? Why do you ask me to resign? I had to face it, and it was very convenient because I used the convention to prove my case that this was a discriminatory practice. So everything led to the other, and I have a daughter. My daughter was born the same time the son of Don was born in Bonn, Germany. So they're both 40 years old today.
Oh, a challenge for, I think, women in diplomacy and in other businesses as well. Does it have to be a trade-off between work and personal life?
A very interesting topic in the Global Summit is bias. What is bias? Because you say, that's your job, a woman's job, this is a man's job. And people were saying that you can complement each other. You can start working together. Okay, you have a child, you must share the caring of the child, you must share in the homework, and it can work. And I think that we are lucky in Asia because we have a family system where we can still have relatives or we can still have people to help us in the housework, in the whatever is necessary or whatever is required of us to do at home. This is a problem with some societies where women have to give up. And I keep saying, no, you can work it out in our family system. We, thank God, we still have good family systems where somebody, an aunt or somebody, is able to help with the family running of a family. It's not giving up one or the other. It's a matter of managing, and it's a matter of being able to combine. I was married for 41 years, and you need a husband who will also give you the space to grow as a human being, not just as a woman or a wife, but as a human being. And I was very happy to listen to one of the CEOs in Thailand talking about the sense of humanity in organizing a company. A lot of fresh ideas, things that you take for granted, unless they are brought to the public and discussed openly. I think we can move forward if we come out with it and be able to share experiences like this. And of course, some of our women decide not to get married. Well,
that seems to be the trend.
That's their choice.
And that seems to have children later.
I have a daughter. Yeah,
later and later in
but
their career.
This is the problem of what they call the leak in the profession. A lot of women are better educated, they go to school, university, they get married, but when they start to have children, they drop out. This is global. So I think what happens is women should be able to help each other how they could address this, to avoid this leak in the pipe that you drop out. And in the Global Summit, you will meet women with a lot of experiences, a lot of your CEOs, how they're able to keep a work and family balance. You don't sacrifice one or the other because I think if you manage it well, you can do it.
So in summary, it's not a trade-off.
It's not a
It's
trade-off.
rather a combination
It's a combination and
of the two,
management.
and it takes personal sacrifice and management.
And also the men have to understand. And sometimes the problem is the other side doesn't understand that a woman also wants to move ahead with her career. And for this, I was very happy that my husband gave me the space that I could grow professionally. So I think that's my advice to young women. And by the way, I'd like to do a study on women ambassadors from ASEAN. And I started it already. I have some data, and then we can work on that data and look at why, and so that we can process that data so we can arrive at common solutions. I always believe in common solutions. I don't have the final recipe for it. Others would have a different recipe for it, and I think that the more contacts we have, the more we build that ASEAN tapestry. I like to call it. You know, I saw the weavers in Korat. I said, yeah, this is like ASEAN. You know, you put different colors and you come out with a nice silk tapestry or silk project. Yeah.
I think our foreign service would be happy to collaborate with you on your women in foreign service project.
We should learn from each other. And I just, because this year and for the next 3 years, we are coordinator of ASEAN-EU relations. So I started together with the EU office in Manila a dialogue between women ambassadors of ASEAN and women ambassadors of the EU. And they're going to do that every year. We share common problems, and sometimes when you hear somebody and they say, hey, that's one way to do it, you know. So the EU office in Manila was very happy. Now this is the second year that we did it, and we had women ambassadors in Europe, and the 17 women ambassadors, foreign ambassadors in Manila. So they chose some from the EU, and we had this webinar, and I was sitting in the EU office in Singapore because I lived in Singapore during the lockdown because my daughter lives in Singapore. And it went very well, so we repeated it this year. So, and it's wonderful that these contacts are developed, not just on an official level, but a personal level. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for your time and your insight, your wit, your advice on ASEAN, on women empowerment. I'm inspired by just talking with you today. And we have shared many prospects for the future with our audience today. Thank you very much, Madam Ambassador, Madam Secretary.
I look forward to the
Albert.
ASEAN women ambassadors getting together.
Yes, I will be sure to be supportive of that.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your cooperation and for the invitation. And thank you to your wonderful foreign minister. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for visiting us. ขอบคุณครับ
ขอบคุณค่ะ
Spokesman Live คุยรอบโลกกับโฆษกกต